Okay, we are live. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Myrtle Beach Real Estate TV. Thanks for joining us. Today, we've got Brendan Payne. Brendan Payne, Century 21 Harrelson Group, one of the top agents here in the market, good friend of mine. Welcome, Brendan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Abe. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Doing great. Can't complain. So today, we're going to talk a couple things. The two biggest stories, of course, are the coronavirus that is spiking in the area right now. That's causing a little bit of concern for people. The second thing we're going to dive into is what we've been talking about the last few weeks on how hot the market has been. We're not seeing any signs of a slowdown. And then the third thing, we're going to dive into the usual numbers that we look at every single week and talk about that, get your input on what your thoughts are as far as the market goes. But let's start off with the cases right now, coronavirus. So we've been spiking, right, for about a week now?
Yep. Seems to be the talk of the town, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah. Talk of the nation, right? I saw yesterday. I don't know if it was West Virginia or somewhere. There's a couple of places out there that are saying that if you come to Myrtle Beach on vacation and come back home, they want you to quarantine. Have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, I've seen that in fact, I think the first one that came out was someone from West Virginia actually one of the government officials actually made the statement that people from West Virginia came here, got it here, and then went back home. And so that made headlines. And then, of course, I think we were earlier in the week or maybe over the weekend that showed that we were in the top 5 for spikes or hot zones or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's no question we're seeing a rise in cases. But, I mean, I haven't seen it affect traffic. Have you? I mean, when you look around town, when I talk to hotel owners, we've been slammed. It's been busy here.
Yeah, I actually had one of my family members runs the maintenance department at a high rise and on the south end. He said it felt like 4th of July 2 weekends ago. They had the numbers and they track, how many cars are in the lot and everything else. So based on those numbers, it was a typical 4th of July weekend, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. But we haven't seen it impact real estate, obviously, because the numbers, once we dive into those, it's been strong. Of course, if the rhetoric continues to happen, if cases keep going up and then all of a sudden some things change, it may impact. If we find a way or if we do something that's going to limit traffic into town, then that could impact. I also did see another thing right now where I know Columbia, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina both passed emergency ordinances where they're forcing people or they're making it mandatory to wear face masks out in public. I haven't seen anything here in town of any talks about that. Have you heard anything at all?
No, and I think that I think the conversation will surely come up because it's in those other areas. It's definitely come up, and everything's focusing around right now. The majority of the topics are around restaurants and the bars and things like that. And that's where, we got a lot of them here. We have a lot of restaurants and bars, and that's where people on vacation go. So I think the conversation is inevitable. We'll just see what happens with the decision, I guess.
Absolutely. And we're not a news channel as far as we don't want to talk about regular news, but we're looking at how it's going to impact real estate activity and also real estate prices. So if we start seeing some things that limit traffic into town, then of course we're going to pay attention to that and it could impact prices. So even with the spiking in activity, the traffic is still here. The market's just been on fire, right? I mean, what are you seeing as far as the market? I say everything that hits the market is selling.
Yeah, it's interesting to see when you start seeing, like, when you put properties on the market and they sell quickly, then that means that you've got buyers that are looking for that particular property and it was marketed the right way, it was priced correctly, and it sells, which is fine. That all makes sense. It's logical. When you start seeing things that were on the market for a period of time and not getting offers, and then all of a sudden they're getting offers, then that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. That's the part that makes me go, okay, something's different that's happening. And I don't know that, it could be one of two things or maybe a combination of both. I think the inventory that's available for buyers, they're starting to have to look at other things. So when something comes on the market that is attractive and it's in the market value, it's moving very quickly and people lose out. So now they're starting to look at some stuff that maybe has been sitting out there. And, it seems like if you're not getting an offer, there's a reason why.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to see homes hit the market brand new or condos and then sell quickly. That makes a lot of sense. But now you're talking about stuff that's been sitting there a while. that wasn't selling, say back in January, February, March, but now all of a sudden is popping.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I think that's it's a lack of supply. Like right now, inventory is so low. I think they have no other options but to go to those properties or to go to new construction, which that in itself is also selling fairly quickly.
The interesting thing though is, we say that, and that's true. That's happening. We can show that, but then you see pockets where like inventory shortage never stays the same. It always has a way of leveling out. So in some of the neighborhoods where you don't have anything available, one comes on and it sells immediately. But then all of a sudden you look like 30, 45 days later, and now there's 3 or 4 because the people that are in that area are looking and going, wow, this is a really hot market. And so inventory has a way of correcting itself. And I'm seeing that in some neighborhoods too. Yeah,
absolutely. So it is a seller's market, and some sellers out there are seeing the opportunity. And that'll kind of balance the supply and demand out. So looking at the supply and demand, looking at the inventory, going back to, I think we're about a 4.1 month supply of housing inventory right now, and condos I think are around a 5.6, 5.7. So both of those, by the rule of thumb of 6 months or less, are in a seller's market. So yeah, we're seeing sellers now saying, wow, my neighbor's home just sold and it sold quickly, and I like their price, so they're hitting the market as well. We have to go back all the way to 2007 to see the same level or the same small number of inventory that we're seeing right now. And so on the topic of say 2007, 2006, I know 2007 the inventory started rising back up again. 2005 is where I think that the bottom was as far as supply, and then we see 2006 started going back up. I know a lot of people like talk to other agents and they're like, man, this looks really familiar to 2005 and 6 as far as activity, and we are busy, but like, how would you compare this to right before the market crash in 2008?
Yeah, I think it definitely feels similar in terms of the stuff sells quickly. Days on market is down. That 4 and 5 month inventory in the residential for our market's really, that's really low. And even when you consider the new construction, some other markets out there, we've got people all over the country that we talk with in the business, and low to them is like 3 or 4 weeks or maybe 5 weeks inventory, and we never quite get to that level. But where we're at right now feels very, it feels a lot like it was back then, where it seemed like when you put it on the market, it was moving as long as it's in decent condition. So I think we're seeing a lot of the same stuff. I think the one saving grace that we've got is it seems to be a little bit more controlled. And that's because of, you just look at the lenders and stuff like that. You're not seeing, one issue we're having right now is sometimes properties don't appraise. You get buyer and seller to agree on the price, and then you have an appraisal issue because it's higher than any of the comparables. So that's different than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and that's a big variable. And I think that's what got us in the mess that we got into back then, was people were coming in and buying 3, 4 oceanfront condos without having the ability to pay for them, because they knew that in 60 days they can sell out of it and be able to cash out. And now, it's a whole lot tougher to buy an oceanfront condo. So you got to qualify, you got to be able to put 20, 25% down in most cases. But another thing, I went back and looked at some numbers back in 2006. Here's what's interesting, because when they compare inventory compared to then, back in 2006. We had a 2-month supply of single family homes. That seemed to be what the low was as far as supply. Now it's 4.1, 4.2, somewhere in that range. So even as low as it feels right now, when you go back and look at the numbers, it's still higher than what it was back then. But you're spot on. Like there's places around the country where days on the market is 7 days. If you don't sell it in 7 days, there's something wrong with the property. And then when we look at the condos, it got as low as 1.6 months supply. And right now we're 5.5, 5.6 months supply in inventory.
Yeah.
So what do you think this is going to continue going on as far as how hot the market is as far as buyers? What do you see that could possibly slow it down?
I think the demand, I don't think there's a lot changing in the demand because, you look, our feeder markets are a lot of the markets where people are, it seems to be, they were hit a little bit harder than this, the Northeast. We bring a lot of people down from the Northeast, and nothing's changed there. I think they're going to still come down. I think some things that could potentially slow, you know, when we're looking at numbers over the next 90, 120 days, the amount of sales we have could just be the inventory available, because there's going to be a limit of properties available that are ready to buy. And then if your next choice is, well, I'm going to have to pay more because there isn't anything available, all that stuff's gone, there's going to be a limit to how much more the bank's going to allow people to pay if they have a mortgage. So we could be limited by just the properties that are available to purchase. Could be limited a little bit by affordability, because I know some of the areas are you know, if they're moving up quickly, then the buyers may not be able to qualify for what they could a while ago because the prices have jumped up in 6 months. So I don't think there's anything changing on the supply or on the demand side of things, but on the supply side of things, that could be changing it. And like we talked about just a few minutes ago, inventory always kind of finds a way to move up to the level of demand.
Yeah, it's interesting as far as appraisals. I've had a couple of properties recently I put on the contract that didn't appraise, and we had to go back to the buyer and negotiate. So what I started doing, like, I just put a contract on a condo 2 days ago, and we had the buyer ask for closing costs, so we gave him closing costs. But then I put a stipulation in there that if it does not appraise, then it's the buyer's responsibility to cover the difference. We'll take it out of the closing costs. Yep. So I'm starting to think ahead, and because the stuff like this is happening. I mean, the market stuff selling so quickly at higher prices than before that appraisals could become an issue.
That's inevitable, and that's a great thing to bring up, because you know, we've got the office in Charleston, and that market is just as active as here. Bigger price points in a lot of areas, but that's almost the norm down there. You're getting a lot of contracts that are coming in with appraisal contingencies. Nobody's taking them, and you know, now that could be something that pushes some buyers out, because if you're putting 20% down on a property and it doesn't appraise and you can cover that, not a big deal. If you're a first-time buyer and you're putting 5% down, or you're doing FHA and need some closing costs, not having an appraisal contingency is not an option.
Absolutely, yeah. So that kills things there.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's dive into the numbers then. Let me pull it up real quick. So let's start off with the single-family homes. This is overall single-family homes. 5,732 homes on the market, both resale and new construction, and out of those, 2,491 are pending. So 43.45%. That number is insane, right? Mm-hmm. You and I look at this every single week. Greg looks at this. We look at this religiously, and every week, if you go back and look at these videos, the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, you've seen a number increase, going from 22% to 28% to 32, 43. I've never seen that kind of number as far as pending relative to what's on the market. That's to me, that's insane.
You know, the other thing to point out in that is that's new construction and resales.
Yes, that's both.
So that's not even necessarily accurate for the homes that are available, because a lot of those pendings, those are homes that are being built right now.
Yeah.
Like, so it's actually even, I mean, it'd be significantly less available in terms of, you know, like coming out of the ground ready to move into homes.
That's actually a great point. Yeah, because a lot of those are to be built or are construction. So yeah, I'm taking those into account as well. That's a really interesting point. Yeah. So let's look at them. So we've got that gives you the whole single family homes. If we look at resales alone, even that is above 40% now. So I know you've been in the business a very long time. So you went through the 2005, 6, 7. I've never seen a number that high since I've been in the business.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and especially, and I look now compared to 2006 and 7, the amount of homes that are standing in Horry and Georgetown County is, I'd love to know that number, because we didn't have near the amount of homes 15 years ago as there are right now. So that's like numbers of homes. That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
1,300 homes under contract.
Yeah, we've built a lot of homes since then.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the new construction one. Let's take a look at that. That number keeps increasing as well. Like you alluded to earlier, this counts to be built, this counts under construction, and it counts ones that are ready to go, ready to sell now. Almost 50%. So that number just keeps rising every single week, it seems. Now going into the condo market, when we look at the overall condo, this was also surprising as well, right? Because about 4 weeks ago, we were struggling in this area. Condos, I think we were at 18%, just less than a month ago.
Yeah.
Now we're at 32%. So the norm, if you go back the last 3 years or so, the norm has been somewhere around the 28%. It has been a good market. So now we're above 32% when you look at all condos.
Where do you think that's and I think a couple obvious things, but beyond the fact that nobody could even find a place to stay for about 6 weeks in the market, where do you think that spikes come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think people were finally able to come in. So there was some pent up demand of people that wanted to buy, and for about a 4-week period, 5-week period, they actually couldn't come here and buy. So then finally, when the floodgates opened up, I think a lot of these buyers came down here and made purchases. And there's a lot of people. I mean, you and I, we talk to a lot of buyers and sellers. A lot of people are buying property down here for a second home to be able to get away from the city. They want the space and they want to be able to come down, and they might be, like I've talked to a couple of people today where they're buying a condo right now. They're going to rent it out in the meantime and be able to get away. And then in 2-3 years from now, when they retire, they're going to move down here, maybe sell the condo, buy a single family home, or stay in a condo. So it's almost like the first step to retirement and moving down here full time. I'm seeing a lot of those people out there as well. Yeah.
I took a call from on one of my properties earlier in the week, somebody moving down from the Midwest. And I'm seeing more of this where they're just like, we've talked about this for a while. And as soon as we were able to get out, we came down in May and took a vacation. We said, we're not waiting anymore. Right. And so people are like, I think this has gotten people's attention, and whether it's moving to Myrtle Beach, moving to Florida, moving to Arizona, I think people are doing the things that they have thought about for a while and put off for a while. And so that's, just stimulating a lot of moves everywhere.
Yeah. It's almost like creating an urgency.
Yeah.
And what they've been thinking about doing for a while now is like, okay, well, let's just get ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And then let's hop over to the oceanfront condos. And that number, again, is high as well. So almost 1,500 units on the market, 295 of those are pending, just under 20%. That's a super strong number there. Any thoughts on the oceanfront condo market?
Yeah, I think I think most people would look at that and go, well, why is that so much lower? And I'd like to see what your thought is on it. But one of the things that I see in the oceanfront is you kind of have two worlds. You have the world where the people are the sellers that are out there that they're motivated. They want to be able to move on and do something else. Those are all those that are under contract. But then the oceanfront, because it's not somewhere that somebody typically lives full time, it's usually not a have to type of sale. So they're not like they have to go move for a job. They're living somewhere else anyway. So you typically see a lot of, sometimes where maybe they're not that motivated, maybe they're overpriced for what the market would allow, but they're still out there. Maybe they'll get an offer, maybe they won't. But I think that's one of the things that goes into that, 20%, we're saying that's a really strong number, but it's a lot less than the residential market. I think that's important just to kind of point out the difference in the type of property and who the owner is for it.
Yeah, no question. And my perspective on that is, the Myrtle Beach area has really become a hot spot for retirees. Right? We're getting so many people from up north moving down here, making this their retirement place, full-time residence. And our oceanfront condos are not really designed or not used for primary residence.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's purely a vacation place. It's purely an investment for a lot of people. So the market for that is a small percentage relative to the amount of people that are moving in the area that could buy a condo off the beach and be able to live there full time. Mm-hmm. And then frankly, I think, when you look at, you and I we talk to a lot of agents around the country. When you look at oceanfront property around the country, we're dirt cheap.
Oh yeah.
You can't. There's no comparison. I was talking to a guy yesterday from Ocean City. He's like, why in the world does my condo not appreciate in Myrtle Beach? But then, my other properties in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Ocean City, they've kind of gone up. And frankly, I think it comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to, number one, the lack of revenue they can generate. Our rental market here is low relative to the rest of the country. And then number two, it costs a lot, between the HOA dues, between, most of these buildings, you're paying a management fee of 40 to 50%. There's really not much left for a lot of owners to be able to justify having this as purely as an investment. Yeah. So we're not able to bring in that investor money for these kinds of properties is my take on it. That's the way I see things when it comes to oceanfront condos.
Yep.
Now, one other thing that we started to do this week, we haven't done in the past, is actually look at land, right? Because I actually think it's becoming relevant now. For a while, it was just completely ignored because nothing was selling. It was 6-7% of the land lots on the market were going on the contract. But now, that number just surprised me when I looked at that this morning. So we're seeing a spike there. And do you think that relates back to the low level of inventory? Do you think people are saying, I'm not finding what I like, let me go buy a piece of land and build a home? Or what do you think is driving that?
Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. And I think the other part is where you mentioned people are coming down maybe a few years before retirement and buying that condo, getting some income and then moving down into it, or a home or something like that. Similar with land, and similar to what we were seeing in 2005 and 2006. So when you've got a lot of demand, you've got seller's market, then people are saying, okay, do I want to wait for a few years? And, maybe I'm not retiring for 3 or 4 years. Do I want to wait for 3 or 4 and then buy a house? Or do I go figure out that I can buy a lot, and as long as the expenses aren't too high, they buy it cash and they're planning on coming down here 3 or 4 years. I know I just sold one in the Dye Club in Barefoot Resort, high-end price for lots in our market. They're not even coming down here to start the build for probably 2 or 3 years. So I think that's where some of that stuff's coming from. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of, and just looking at pendings every day, is the bigger tracts. So 4, 5 acres, Conway, Little River, Longs, those areas. People coming from other areas are wanting a little more space. They're coming, they don't want to be in an HOA, and those are pretty attractive to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're maybe locking in the land right now, getting their space, and then building a couple of years down the road.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, that's all the numbers for the week. Anything you want to finish off with? Any final comments?
No, it's really positive news for sure. And I think this is the time, if you aren't plugged into something like what you're doing with this weekly data, you can probably wait 2 weeks and be behind. Things are changing that quickly. So this is a great venue to get good weekly information on it, and some of the why behind it from.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys out there have any questions at all, please reach out to Brendan, myself, or Greg, or anybody in our office. Would love to answer any questions, whether you're selling, buying, or even just curious as to what the values are. Any questions at all pertaining to your property, would be more than glad to answer any questions. Well, Brendan, enjoyed having you today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks, Ed.
Have a great day.
Yep.